Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Croatian government for the invitation to this summit. I would also like to congratulate Croatia in my own name and on behalf of the OECD for the successful completion of negotiations related to the EU accession. The benefits of private investments are widely recognized. They include the expansion of productive capacity, enterprise development, technology transfer, productivity enhancement, and finally, and most importantly, job creation. Since more than a decade, the OECD has been working with the governments of Southeast Europe to help improve business climate and competitiveness and private sector development, addressing the dimensions of investment policy, investment promotion, trade policy, access to finance, tax policy, human capital development, SME policy, regulatory reform, and infrastructure for investment. The past decade has witnessed huge progress in most of these dimensions, which has brought about a tenfold increase of foreign direct investment between the year 2000 and the peak year 2008, and reached $36 billion in the record year 2008. And the average GDP growth of that good period, that boom period, was around 5% on average between 2000 and 2008. Challenges remain, however, and private investors point out the main areas for improvement. And I will cite 5 of these areas. The first one is more regional approaches, which are needed in areas such as investment promotion, infrastructure, and labor market. For example, Google had considered setting up an R&D center in the region here, but unfortunately the talent pool in one single Southeast Europe country is too small for Google to set up an R&D center, and pooling of talent in the region was not possible due to some rigidities which were preventing the regional pooling of talent. Second point is needing more competition in order to facilitate market entry for new firms. Some of the markets are locked up by strong monopolies or oligopolies. A third point is fighting corruption, which is a significant deterrent to growth. A fourth point is support for SMEs in the form of targeted financial instruments as well as export guarantees. And the fifth point is restoring trust in the system of mutual payments. And here, the governments should set a good example by, for instance, ensuring very timely payments, notably in the reimbursement of value-added tax. Now, the crisis has struck. It was already mentioned today and yesterday, and it revealed structural vulnerabilities in the region. In fact, much of the investment from the boom years went into real estate and the privatization of companies in the non-tradable sector. And very little was invested in greenfield capacity and export-oriented industries. The growth achieved was largely consumption-driven and based on credit expansion, which has reached its limit because today the Southeast Europe households are now heavily indebted, which means that there is little room for further credit expansion. New sustainable bases have to be built for future growth, which will imply stronger export orientation and including Southeast European economies in global value chains, finding niches in which Southeast Europe economies can be competitive on a global basis. Moreover, the competitive advantage can no longer be built on low labor costs, since wages have increased in Southeast Europe, and they should continue increasing if we want to build prosperous societies in Southeast Europe. So the competitive advantage has to be built on 2 things. One is the strategic proximity of European Union and Mediterranean markets, but also on higher value-added goods and services with higher knowledge content. Let me just quote one number. Today's Southeast Europe exports contain an average of only 5% high technology goods and services, compared to 10% for Central and Eastern Europe and 20% on average for average OECD countries. Reflecting on the speech by Yves Le Terme, the Belgian Prime Minister, yesterday, who spoke about Southeast Europe countries becoming actors in the European Union, one can ask, what if the next decade for Southeast Europe were not only about finalizing the transition and being good students of the adoption of the acquis? Can we be more ambitious and put Southeast Europe in the driver's seat? Can we create a vision for Southeast Europe in 2020, which is in harmony with, but not a carbon copy of, Europe 2020 strategy? We believe that, yes, we can. This is why we are working with the governments of the region to create a 2020 vision for Southeast Europe based on smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. To these three pillars of Europe 2020, we add a fourth pillar, integrated growth, which strives to deepen the regional common market. Europe 2020 strategy does not have that fourth pillar because it already has a very good, well-developed common market. The three pillars which are taken from Europe 2020 should be adapted to Southeast Europe conditions and needs. For instance, the strategy will cover the very important issue of brain drain, which is not covered in Europe 2020 and is essential for Southeast Europe. We're working on this vision in the framework of the Southeast Europe Investment Committee, which was mentioned by Mr. Biščević. And it should be endorsed at the ministerial meeting in Paris in November this year. This vision will be translated into concrete actions whose implementation will be overseen by the Southeast Europe Investment Committee, the management of which will soon be transferred under the management of Regional Cooperation Council, which will show an increased ownership of the region of the main issues. We're therefore looking forward to an exciting new decade in Southeast Europe, which should enhance the positioning of these countries as actors in the European Union. Thank you very much.